IT. So anything that we're doing in-house to manage multiple tenants with different preferences and flavors is really our goal is to put those standard operating procedures together so that you have the enterprise grade IT team that you might not want to build out on your own. With that comes managing inventory and a lot of other challenging items. So wasted spend because of lack of inventory management is typically our top thing. So we're going to hammer in quite a bit there. We're going to talk a bit about security. We're going to discuss a bit about the management of the admin center, and then a couple of things that are kind of hot on our radar that are coming in the near future. So with that, I know I introduced him on an email. Most of you guys who have joined already know him, but I'm really happy to have Todd Smith with us today. Todd, do you have mic access?
I do, James.
Oh man, things couldn't be going better. So you're sitting at the top of the stadium in Baton Rouge during a sunset right now, huh?
Yeah, right across the street from it. Right behind me is the stadium. The time is a little different here as well. It's just always looks like this. It's beautiful.
If it's Louisiana, it's probably just about an evening behind the rest of the world.
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. All right. Looks like we're already getting some people that are putting some things in the comments as well. So if y'all want to add to the comments, I'll be managing that as we move on. If you don't want to speak up, but Todd has studied all night long and is ready to answer anyone's questions, no matter their complexity. So if you've ever played a game of Stump the Chump, now's your chance. Put in those questions and see if you can prove me wrong that Todd knows it all. Todd, you ready for that game?
No, not at all.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to do a little bit of screen sharing, but I think I'd like to start before I do that. Can you give a little bit of a sense to the rest of the group on how frequent it is that we hear questions or comments around 365 optimization and really why this became a focus for us to develop a dashboard for it that's custom for our customers?
Yeah, I mean, pretty regularly, almost daily, somebody's asking a question about 365. Very specifically in regards to management. Anytime we were talking to a client doing an assessment, we also noticed that they had a lot of waste. So a lot of our clients were paying yearly for licenses. They didn't realize that they had an alternative going through a CSP, being able to pay monthly, being able to scale up and scale down on a monthly basis. They had a lot of disabled users with licenses assigned that they were paying for every single month that they didn't need to. There was a lot. There's a ton of different reports, and I think there's a link that I need to send you to share. It's a little obnoxious that shows all of Microsoft's portals. There's over 100 of them, so it's very difficult to find some data. So I mean, we manage our own dashboard and 365 environment internally. So we decided to take some key data from the clients we manage and our own. To try to throw or put together a dashboard using a lot of this data that's otherwise kind of buried. So I could find all of this data within 365. However, I'm going to have to do a lot of mouse clicks. I'm going to have to do some PowerShell commands, and I don't have time to do that on a daily basis. So that was the idea behind this.
Well, why don't we just share the dashboard real quick? You can kind of give a sense of why you did the things you did with it when you were putting together the architecture of it. And then we'll quickly adapt from optimization and cost controls into the security component. Along the way, we'll take whatever questions come.
Sounds good.
Awesome. I'm going to assume everyone can see the screen. If you can't, feel free to chime in right now. Let me know. Happy to make an adjustment, but it looks like it is presenting. So
yes, sir.
Todd, let's start on the far left side. On the left, we got the list of product names, correct?
Yep.
And is this everything in the portal or just the select items?
Select items. We tried to focus on licenses that you're actually paying for. So this is a demo tenant. It's got some random licenses in there, but we tried to focus on licenses you're paying for. There's a lot of free licenses that can make it look really cluttered if you're looking at your license summary. So we wanted to strip that out.
Okay, thank you. And then the red, your eyes are drawn to that red area pretty closely. So explain unassigned licenses versus disabled users with licenses.
Correct. So both of those are areas where you can save. So when I was mentioning earlier how a lot of our clients might be paying for yearly subscription licenses in order to try to get a discount, if you look at it, are you really getting a discount? You might with the overall price, but uh, those are licenses that you're paying for that are not in use. And so yes, you might grow into them in the future, but depending on when that future is, I mean, you're ultimately paying for waste. And so that's something that a CSP like Center can help with. Instead of committing to a yearly subscription for licenses, we can put you on a monthly subscription where you can scale up, scale down each month based on actual usage. So some of our clients want to have one or two extra licenses unassigned just because they grow quickly, right? They know that they might find out about a new hire that starts tomorrow and they don't have time to put in a ticket, procure licensing, anything like that. So they want that flexibility. But most of our clients have unassigned. The goal is to have it at 0 or 1, just so they're not having waste there. The disabled users with licenses, that's another tricky one that a lot of people don't realize that they're paying for. So often when you disable an account, you kind of forget sometimes that there's a license you need to go remove. But not only that, but sometimes when you disable an account, you want to keep that mailbox active for a while, depending on the user's role in the organization. They might have a lot of emails coming in that you still need access to. And that's another area where we can absolutely help, because you don't need those mailboxes with an active license. You can convert them to a shared mailbox, give others full access to it, and remove that license. And to view that data, the unassigned licenses, you can view that pretty easily in 365. To view the disabled users with a license sign would be a PowerShell command or some custom filter that you have to build out and remember how to get there each time. So we wanted to make those two stand out and make it very obvious to see where your waste is.
And just to make it easier on everybody, we made it so that it's drill downable, so you can see which people within your organization still have that license assigned to them.
Right.
If I were sitting in the shoes of people listening today, I'd be thinking to myself, it's probably rare that we see that be an issue. This must be kind of a demo that's built for exposing that. And even then, it's percentagely a small amount. Have you had any interesting stories about large amounts of waste?
Yes, one client, they were going through an acquisition and moving between different tenants, and they had hundreds of mailboxes or user accounts disabled with license signed because they had to maintain all of that email. We were able to save them between unassigned licenses and disabled users with licenses, I think $24,000 a year. Like, they were very large. They had thousands of licenses, but we were able to save them a substantial amount, mainly just focusing on those two areas.
And that was roughly 33% or 35% of their spend was in waste, because it was just lost in the transition of an acquisition, right?
Right.
That's interesting. All right. So we have these smaller gauges up here on the right. Anything you want to add about these?
Yeah, sure. But that disabled user, so that's one story. And I mean, another one, it's almost every time that we do an assessment with a client, they have waste, whether it's one license or 50.
Right.
There's always waste there. Yeah, so because it's a monthly subscription licensing, we want to make it a lot easier for our clients to be able to see, well, hey, my invoice grew this month. Well, hey, check it out. We have a new users gauge that you could click on and see how many accounts, what accounts were created within 30 days. So you can see why your invoice increased that month. Try to make it pretty easy to access. Mailboxes at capacity is another one. Microsoft has, since we've built this dashboard, they've actually built a report that'll show mailbox usage. It's about 3 days behind the actual usage, but you have to know how to get there. And it's like 5 mouse clicks to get there unless you're saving it. It can be pretty difficult. Even then, you got to figure out how to sort it. You have to kind of drill in. There's a lot of information. So we tried to make it pretty simple and focused on the mailboxes over 70% capacity. And let's say that you're an organization, you don't care about that. You want to focus on the 90s. Well, these are all these gauges are customized. So we can customize that, whatever that threshold is, to you. And it allows you to focus on mailboxes that are approaching capacity, which the capacity depends on what license you have, right? If you have an enterprise license, you're going to have a 100 gig limit per mailbox. If you're a business license, it's 50 gig limit. But it allows you to see which to focus on, whether or not you might need to upgrade them to an enterprise license or enable an archive policy and an archive policy, retention policy across the company that can help reduce their production regular day mailbox and start moving older data and older email to an archive. So depending on what license you have, some licenses include an unlimited archive. You might as well take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. This probably helps with maintaining proactive support to your employees too, that they're not going to wind up getting a message or locked out or blocked. Are these things alertable? Do I have to focus on this daily, or will it tell me proactively?
If you are a managed client with Center, these are things that we're getting alerted on and proactively assisting with daily. But all of our clients that we resell our Secure 365 licensing to have access to this dashboard and have the ability to view this data. What we also do is we send a monthly email with a summary of what's going on in their tenant with this data as well, so they can check into it at any point in time.
Cool. Now we're going to segue into security, it looks like. There's four gauges that are security driven. Is there an order you want to talk about these, or should we start just here at the top?
Yeah, let's just start at the top there. So Microsoft has a secure score, which there's been a lot of changes to it over the last few years, but they have hundreds of areas where they make recommendations. And depending on the licensing you have, your score could change pretty drastically. And so the idea with this was that we wanted to focus on key areas that are quick wins and things that would help quite a bit, right? Like require MFA for all users with admin roles in the organization. Well, this will help you view to see where you're at on that, on achieving that. It is a demo dashboard, so it looks like there's some duplicate data in there.
Some duplicates, yeah. But look at the top, guys. We actually show you what's low user impact and what's low cost. Percentagely, your business may be huge, so rolling out in MFA might be a challenge. But in most cases, we can use this as a guiding influence to figure out where we should focus our time for low-hanging fruit. So your account executive with Center would be looking at this periodically and then showing it to you and saying, hey, these low lows, we should be knocking those out for you this quarter. And then keeping you on a track of higher security over time.
Correct. And we actually have recently had a client hit 100%. They accepted the challenge of making sure they were 100%, and they were able to hit that. But yeah, a lot of those, there's no cost associated, and it doesn't really impact the user. You might as well implement it. Some of them does have a cost, depending on what licensing you have. It may or may not be included. And then each of those Center can help with. So if you're a Secure 365 customer, we can help guide you exactly how to do it. It gives you information there, but we can help you achieve that. So whether it's deploying MFA or enabling any of those policies, we can absolutely help with that.
Let's talk about this trend line here. Looks like a giant spike.
Yep. So different security alerts on a daily basis, just so you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. It can get pretty noisy depending on how many users you have. So for instance, this one's looking at a phishing email. It's notifying you that, hey, a phishing email actually got delivered. But oftentimes with those, again, depending on your licensing, emails can get pulled back. So if you're using 365, if you're using Defender for 365, some of those are just notifications that, hey, this phishing email got through, but because you're using Defender for 365, it was actually deleted and removed from mailboxes after the fact. Some users may have seen it already, but for the most part, it was deleted. And some of these are going to be, when it comes to the security alerts, suspicious logins and things about different locations. And so instead of trying to filter through that, we wanted to create a separate gauge that was focusing on the suspicious logins. So things like improbable travel, right? You have somebody that's logging in from Houston 1 minute, 5 minutes later, they're logging in from another country or another city that you could not possibly be logging in from. Some of that could be legitimate in VPN or Citrix usage, where you're logging in to your account from multiple locations, but sometimes that could indicate that you have an account that's compromised.
And then that's a good segue probably into how they got your password to begin with. So you want to talk about password breaches?
Yep. So this is something that you do not get with 365, but if you're a secure 365 client, we give this as a value add. So your passwords, most users will use their email address for their work and whatever password they used to log in with on a daily basis for all these different third-party sites. And you have no idea what the security looks like on those third-party sites. They often don't require MFA, but most users using the same exact passwords, and those sites can get breached. And they get sold on the dark web, your credentials do, because 9 times out of 10, most users are using the exact same email address and password to log into their work email. And so they're selling that information. And what we're doing is pulling in all of your contacts, all of your email addresses associated with your 365 tenant, and scanning the dark web to see if your email address is associated with any of those breaches, and showing you that data here so that you could go to your user and say, hey, Ma, let's just assume that that's their name at abccore.com. There was a LinkedIn breach. Yeah, it happened in 2012, but if you're using that password for anything, don't use it ever again. It's gone. It's out there. People know it, and it's going to be used for brute force attempts and trying to get to any of your accounts on a daily basis.
I think one of the pieces of value for me, as far as what I hear clients getting back its feedback, is that it gives you some really fine granularity. Like this was a LinkedIn breach date 2012, but it was May of 2016. The data surfaced on the dark web market. So it's 4 years later that it came out to be sold. The passwords in breach were stored, so it shows you how they were stored. Sometimes it'll say plain text. Sometimes it'll show hashes. It'll even tell you how or what data was taken. So more than just email addresses and usernames, it might list out for you date of birth and anything else that might have been in there. So you could really get proactive with your users and how you do your training and let them know that whatever your LinkedIn stuff is, you need to redo it. All right, Todd, I want to transition. Oh, go ahead.
One more at the bottom, we have a gauge that just shows all of your domains associated with your 365 tenant when they expire. If it's associated with email, meaning it has an MX record. If you have an SPF record, like a spoof record, and then what your MX record is. And the reason we have this is there's been times where a client that we didn't manage, or their domain expired, and they're calling us because their email's down. Well, if they just could log in here and look, it pulls in all of the domains associated with your tenant. You could have bought them. Oftentimes, as you scale, you might be buying a domain from one registrar and another a few years later. It's pulling in all that data, no matter where it's purchased from, when it expires. If there's an SPF record, is very important, because that's how someone you're sending email to validates that the server that it's receiving email from is allowed to send email, or if it's a spoof or not. And so that's making sure you have a SPF record, spoof record, and then an MX record, and what that's set to and the last time it's changed. Oftentimes, if you have a web developer, they're not familiar with DNS very well, they could change your MX record and bring down your email. So we want to indicate the last time that was changed, because sometimes it's not your email domain that's expired. It's the MX record was changed to something other than 365's mail servers. And so that's just a quick way to make sure you're going to receive email.
So 100% of this, from every single number you're seeing on here, it came from Todd's experience in managing a multi-tenant environment. But the noise from you guys, from our customers and our prospects, of what would be significant and important, and then Todd having to chase it down in portals, or having his team chase it down in portals, is the reason that these things bubbled to the top. It's led us to doing this with our other products as well. And I won't spend much time on Azure, but you'll notice a very similar look here, where we're giving you the exact dollar amount of the wasted resources that you have in the cloud. This has been extremely popular with our Azure customers, as has the 365 dashboard, and has now led us to building more proof of value dashboards similar to this one for our other product lines. So maybe you're not seeing exactly what would be relevant to you and your organization. No problem. If you make us aware of it, I'm certain we can bubble it up to getting onto the dashboard itself. Todd, we're running a little short on time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. Any comments? You mentioned managing in the admin centers complex or at least challenging. Microsoft doesn't make it the easiest to see all this. If they're a managed client of ours or a secure 365 client, does that get any easier?
Well, I mean, it doesn't magically start making sense, but let's say you need some help. Let's say that there's some compliance you have to reach. Well, if you're paying for our secure managed services or our secure 365 licensing, you can utilize Center for not only break fix support for advisory services as well. We've had a client that did not want to allow email access outside of their organization for specific users. They didn't have a clue where to start, but we made sure they had the proper licensing. So something that included Azure AD Premium P1. And we helped build all of those policies with them. We scheduled time and knocked it out, but we didn't just set it up and say, hey, here you go, it's done. We taught them and worked with them on it. Because if they needed to make exclusions, we didn't want them to have to wait, call support. They would know exactly where to go make those changes. So ideally, if you're not able to find something or figure out how to do it, that's why a partner like Center's here. And then if there are some metrics that you'd like to see that, like you mentioned, that you don't see today, let us know and we can add it for you. More than likely, we can pull that data.
Yeah, that's perfect. Taylor, we're short on time and getting to a point where I'm kind of running out of the areas we were going to show. Are there any questions already being proposed?
Yeah, we have one. Actually, Rick just jumped in and said he has a hard stop at 11:30, but topic of activity by usage would be very beneficial. It took him a lot of effort to determine that he was over licensed by 35 users.
Yep. And that's something that I've recently got a request for, to where we've looked into adding a gauge that shows, if let's say you have a user that has not just a mailbox, but a 365 license, well, you should be able to pull in and see if they've activated Office. They might have had that license for a year and never actually installed Office, and you might be oversubscribing, and you could actually downgrade their license. So that is a dashboard we can build. There is a report in 365. So one thing we're looking to add here is helpful links. Like I mentioned, there's over hundreds of Microsoft portals and hundreds of reports. There's probably 5 or 6 that I know of off the top of my head that I'm in a daily basis that we might not be able to build a gauge. Microsoft might have something for you, but we want to put the link to where it's a lot easier to find versus buried. So we'll be adding that soon to this 365 dashboard.
Todd, I think Rick is in agreement with you. He's written, yep, buried, and is typing more. So he wants to see that one for sure. Any other questions on there? I don't think it looks like there are any submitted by text. Todd, I know one that came in beforehand was what items within 365 are hot right now? What are the popular topics that everyone's wanting to discuss with you?
Well, CMMC compliance and anything geared towards security. Autopilot and Intune is something that we're driving pretty heavily at Center. A lot of people have the license. If you have Microsoft 365 Business Premium, you have it. You don't even realize it today. To where, especially during COVID, everyone working remotely, you could, instead of shipping laptops to an office, you could ship them directly to the end user as long as it's a modern business device. It can't be something you pick up from Best Buy, but you can ship it straight from the distributor to your end user, have it registered on the back end, and when they log in, it'll automatically deploy all of their licenses. It'll register them in Intune, add them to your Azure AD tenant, and install all of your applications. Set up policies as well. So that's one thing that we're driving.
Could that be an interesting tool to have in the event you're breached by say a ransomware virus?
It can help because if you're, especially if you're not a managed client, Intune is a pretty good management tool to where you can easily deploy software to your end users, and you can set up compliance profiles to where you can see if machines are in compliance or not, right? Whether or not they have that software installed, or you can make it to where it'll alert you if specific software is installed that you don't want to be installed. But yeah, it can absolutely help deploy any software. So if you're breached, so we've had a client that was breached recently. They didn't have a modern or next gen antivirus or an EDR, and they didn't have a management tool. Whereas if they had something like Intune, even, we could have easily deployed that to all users, whether they're on the network or not, very quickly.
So a combination of Microsoft Defender tools and Intune would likely have helped that strategy quite a bit.
Correct. Defender is built into Windows. If you install another antivirus, it disables it. But if you have the business premium tool, you could actually centrally manage Defender and enable some policies that are otherwise normally disabled by default on Defender antivirus. Not only that, but Windows has, or Microsoft has, a Defender for Endpoint, which is their EDR tool that is really powerful and can help pull in data and notify you of anomalies. So that also would be very quick to enable through Intune, and you could see that data instantly.
Perfect. Well, guys, I want to hear any other questions y'all have. I'm happy to answer them, but we are at our time. So if you need to drop off, feel free to drop. It won't offend us. Did anyone else have any questions?
We did a great job, James. I think we just hit a home run. Yeah.
Todd, two options here. We can assume we did a good job, or we can sit in silence till they think of one.
I'm okay with silence.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank y'all so much for joining us. It's awesome to hear your voices on the surveys from the last event and be able to throw something together so quickly to at least address the topic. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation with y'all. So if you want to go more granular into how these things might benefit your business, you can let your account executive know. You can respond to us directly from the invite, or email me. I'm James Schuler. Everyone might know that by now. But if y'all want to discuss this topic, I'd love to continue it. Jason, I just saw you type in. So if you want to hit me on the side, happy to give you a call today. Guys, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.